Okay, we're on live and welcome to another edition of African Americans Ain't Africans, the talk show that proves without a shadow of a doubt that the so-called African American is not an immigrant, refugees, or none of these other foreigners that they claim are coming across. Today we're going to talk about the purpose of the group and the purpose of the so-called African American, Black, Negro, colored in America. We have a few guests with us tonight, and we're all going to throw in our input. And what we want these talks to be, we want them to be informative. We want to give you information that you can use, information that can be helpful for your children, your siblings, your parents, whoever. Because as long as African Americans keep pretending like they're from a foreign place, they'll always be screwed over. And that's the problem we're having now. We're having what you see that's going on across America is African American is fragmented beyond repair. And well, not beyond repair, but really. And we're not looking at the things that will bind us together and bind us to this land. Instead, we are focusing on things that make things worse for us. So before we get started, of course, my name is Buck Wadham. I'm the moderator of African Americans Ain't African, and I'll also be moderating this conversation we're having tonight. So let me go ahead and introduce the people who are going to be in this conversation tonight, bringing up various subjects that African Americans talk about and African Americans see on a daily basis. I first want to introduce a young lady that's been part of the group since its inception, Shy Ray. Shy Ray, how are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you, Carrie.
Cool. We also have uh, Denisa. She was always with me when I was on the radio programs on Black Talk Radio and Blog Talk. How you doing, Nisi?
Hey, what's going on?
Hey,
Alito.
what's going on? Polito. Also we have this brother's gonna blow your mind. Edwin Nathaniel, brother, how you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Cool. And also coming at us is our girl Charlene Brown. How you feeling, Charlene?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank all of you guys for being here. Um, if you look at what's going on in America now, you will notice that to be only 12% of the population, you take up all of the airwaves in America, and this is on mainstream American television. And the reason you take up all that mainstream because it has to show you the spotlight always have to be on you. The spotlight has to always be on the so-called African American Black people to show the world that we are not worthy to sit at our rightful place on the throne. That's one of the main purposes of TV, radio, and the social media to show us as bumbling idiots where we can't do anything. Well, the panel that we have assembled tonight is going to be here to show you that that's not the case. So I want to get on with it and go forward. So before we get on, I would like to say that the purpose of the group African Americans Ain't African is basically as simple. I mean, I can't get no simpler than what I'm about to tell you now. The purpose of the group African Americans Ain't Africans is to show the people that call themselves African American, Black, colored, Negro, nigger, all of the misnomers that are used against us, is to show you that this is your land. This is the land that produced you. This is the land that produced your mothers, your grandmothers, your great grandmothers, which ultimately produced you or us. And to think that we are not a part of that is a trip. And you've seen how things have been going for us because we are not in our rightful place. We are here on this planet for a short while. And like Prince say, you better live now before the Grim Reaper come knocking at your door. So there's some things that we all must do. This just isn't a group effort. This is going to take all of our efforts. I'm sorry, this isn't just my effort because I'm just passing information that I received from my elders and some of the people in the community that is noticing the same problem. So we want to share some ideas and some of the ways that we think and we see things with you, and maybe it can be helpful to you. So, Shy Ray, if you can, give us, what you think and what you're seeing in the so-called African American and how that can be rectified.
Well, the African American is just plain confused. And the purpose of this group is to help him not be confused. I'm saying him as a collective of people, not as a gender. So, um, in educating these people on who they are, they'll start walking in their identity. And that's very important that our people walk in their identity and start appearing as adults. We have to appear as adults to the world. And what we need to do for the next generation is to set that ball in motion so that they won't inherit this chaos that we have been living in. So the African American have to be educated.
Yes, I mean, absolutely right. And I think when we say that an American needs to be educated, I think we have to really put out and make sure that everybody knows is what we get is education in the public school system, and everybody who's in the sound of my voice have been through the public school system at one time or another. After you get out of it, you realize that you've been miseducated. That's one of the problems that we're having in the public school system today. What a principal just shot a kid because he wouldn't sell his dope for him. Another kid beat up a principal because the principal told him to take off his headphones. The question that is not being asked is, why are these kids acting like this? You're supposed to be in a nice environment, a nice organization. These kids should want to learn. They don't want to learn because they know that the schools are teaching them bullshit. Just like I went through the public school system, I went through the same thing. It didn't teach me anything on how to survive on this planet, survive in my hometown. It taught me to be an immigrant in my own homeland. When I'm an immigrant, whatever my ancestors, whatever my great grandmother, my great great grandfather set down for me, I can't claim it because I'm looking across the waters 5,000 miles away.
Mhm.
That hasn't served us good at all. So, what we want to do is just bring you information to show you how you are connected to what we're talking about. And we're going to go to Edwin Nathaniel now. And you can also check us out in African Americans Ain't Africans on the Facebook page. You check us out there. So, Edwin, what do you see what's going on?
Well, I like to just be able to read off from a post that I created in the group to really express what actually is happening to our people. And it's like this: to new members entering this group, keep in mind the psychological effects the notion of every so called African American having lineage from Africa has on you, as you have been made a foreigner by lineage on paper. Psychologically, this has caused many careless actions on many who gravitated to such schemes from the get go, to the point of further manipulation by agents who look like you, who sold out for lavish lifestyles, in line with the very criminals whose ancestors stole all the land rights from your ancestors you knew nothing about because of the public school system, what is known as the public school system, which pushed a lie that has many in an intellectual coma. This group exists to uncover those lies and to encourage your full recovery from psychosis that disables you on levels you never calculated. For those who bought into religion, remember this too has disabled you as well, as it was brought over by these criminals and other foreign agents in league with them for similar purposes based on promises. Because let's get real about it. A criminal's thinking, they do go on the concept of the enemy of my enemy is my friend. But at the end of the day, there is no honor among thieves. So the maltreatment of what is known as misnomer as Negro, colored, black, African American, and who knows what else they're going to add on years from now. You're actually under occupation by foreign criminals from another land. And if you're not sure of who you are, that you have ancestral ties to all of the Americas, that's where they have you. And like Kerry says, you're not really going to care about what goes on over here. And that's not something you want to leave your children. That's how I feel about it for right now.
So you can see what we're talking about. You can see what Edwin is talking about is, like you said, what do we have? We're walking around here like ghosts in a machine, not knowing where we are, not knowing our purpose on this planet. Because like I said before, we're all here. We're only here for a minute. And so what are we doing with the time that we have, while we're here? We're here for a reason. We're not here to be somebody else's consumers. We're not here to just kill ourselves off. We're not here to see. I was in a place yesterday and I seen all these people had tattoo on their faces. And so I asked one of the brothers, I'm like, why would you tattoo up your face if your face, you're showing your face to the world? If it's written all over, what do you think people are gonna think of you? This brother wanted to fight. So this is what our children have become. This is why our children are kicked out of the school, because they're questioning the status quo. And normally, when the teacher calls the mom to say, "Hey, your kid is acting up in class," it's not that the kid is acting up. It's just normally, I mean, some kids do act up. Don't get me wrong. They just see it. They're just doing what they see at home. But normally, these kids are acting up. They're not acting up. They're asking the teacher a question because kids know when the teachers are bullshitting them. Kids know. So when the children ask these people that are teaching them, what are they talking about in order to become Negroes today? If somebody asks you a question, answer the question. Not answering the question, answer the question. And these kids are asking these teachers questions, and the teachers can't answer them. So they call the kid's mom and tell the mom that these kids are disrupting the class, when that is not the case. These kids are trying to learn, and the public food system is making it easy not for them to learn. So, Nisi, what do you think about that, and what do you think about the way about the youth are being trained in our community?
Well, can you hear me?
Yes.
First of all, I just feel that we've bought into this dumbed down, and it dates back. I think this African American shit, it really kind of started back in the 60s. Uh, and, it started about that time. So to me, I think some of the things that we have to look at is, you know, what who are you? Do you even ask yourself who are you? Most of the time we don't. We just go by what someone has told us, okay? Because the African American is really those people who are masquerading themselves uh, as somebody who originated on a continent on the other side of the world that they don't even know anything about. That's the first thing. So when you look at that, and then if you continue to not help your children understand who they are, then it just becomes an inculcated generation, uh, a generational thing. And so you're spreading it to your progeny, and nothing has changed. So some of the questions I think that you should ask yourself is, did your kin folks tell you you're from Africa? That's first thing. Did they tell you the name of the country and tribe you came from? If not, why wouldn't your relations know where the hell they came from? Why wouldn't they know that? Do you then you ask yourself, do you even honor those who came before you if you've told yourself that you're not from Africa, but then you conclude that you don't know that your folks don't know what they're talking about? Then you're disregarding and disrespecting their words. When you go back and you ask any of your elders any of these questions, and then 9 times out of 10, they're going to look at you like you're crazy. So, what information do you have that links you to being from somewhere in Africa? Okay, but you say you're from Africa, but you don't have a clue as to specifically where you came from, and you want to go back to where you're going back to where, and you don't know where that is. So, these are some things that we ask. They're just basic, simple questions that play into cognitive dissonance, you know, and that's just a person who is stuck in a mindset, and it's really a program type of mindset. So we have to ask those kind of questions. And Basically, when you come into African Americans ain't African, we're going to ask that you be open to these things. We're going to ask that you understand what we're saying, because the group itself, it promotes an awareness of indigenous people of America, which is AKA Turtle Island. We ask that you understand the difference between America and the corporation, the United States Incorporated. Because when people say fuck America, when our people say that, you make no sense. This is your home. The land hasn't done anything to you. It is the corporation that's the construction. So these are the things that we want you to do, and we want to encourage you to research your ancestral heritage and your culture.
Well, one of the things that is that brings a lot of confusion in only to the people of America is we have a lot of foreign influence, and the foreign influence can be used to just trick us heavily. And I want to bring a sister in now that talks about that foreign influence big time. When we talk about, and I'll give you an example of a foreign influence. It's not. I'll give you. Here's an example of how foreign influence messes us up. Remember, people, the Afrocentrics always talk about a cat named Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey's purpose was to take what was going on in the world at the time, take the indigenous people of America's mind and place it over in a land 5,000 miles away. The plan didn't work then, and we still have people on that track today. We still have our people looking over at Africa and Asiatic black man and Islam and never asked themselves the question, well, while they were building Islam, wherever they built it, what were your people doing here? And in Christ times, what were your people doing here? And when you ask the African American this, being that they never questioned anything, being that they didn't learn nothing from master, because everything the African American knows come from his master. He really doesn't come up with concepts that will fit the lifestyle for him and his people. Everything he or she knows or think they knows come from foreign people. So what we're gonna do, we want to bring in Charlene to talk about that because she has an excellent look on that. Charlene.
Hello. What I just can't understand is how do people come over, and it doesn't matter where they're coming from, but come over to North America and speak for us, mainly from the Southeast, and expect not to get checked when they are not speaking our truth. What makes a person feel as though they're entitled to speak for us and we don't check them? And that's what I've been pretty much having a debate about. And and here is the question I want to ask our collective: why do we believe everybody, but do not believe the people who lied to us the least? And that is our grandma. I I understand that a lot of people come over here and they are and they're running away from their own homeland. So they have to show some gratitude of being led into America and whatever the case is. But I just do not understand what makes everybody come here to tell us our story and expect us to believe what their interpretation of what they have been told or learned about our story, and we not challenge them. I am going to challenge you when you try to tell my story.
Mhm.
Here it is. A person's grandmother could just come to America, and or they could be okay. Let's say the third generation, the second generation. The fuck? How is what they say about my people, I'm supposed to listen to them. That makes
No, you're
no
not.
sense.
What I'm saying about the Marcus Garvey, all this Africa propaganda, all this Asiatic black man. What it, and who has ever seen anybody that was black? Who has ever seen anybody that was the color black? If you look at your cell phone, that's black. If you look at your pair of shoes, that's black. If you look at a car, that's black. How did they get us to think that to stop being what we were and to entrap us into a mind trap that calls us black? When you have never seen nobody black, and if I show you somebody black, you will attack me because you think I'm being funny. But this is what you call yourself every day. Other people, foreigners, don't speak in the same language as we do. So they come not familiar with to train us with to have us do their bidding. This is simple. I, Before your kid get to kindergarten, they should know this. But we like to pretend like we never know. Nobody told me. It's not nobody. And everybody remember this and keep this in mind. It's nobody's job to tell you shit on this planet. You supposed to find out yourself. When a baby when a baby is learning to walk, when he falls down, what does he do? Try it again. Everybody has that gene in them, so stop playing that. I just a done nigga and nobody told me nothing. No, you're supposed to find out. Cut off the TV, cut off the basketball game, stop clowning, stop going to everybody else's bars, stop going to everybody's stores, and start producing for the people who you see suffering. And most of the people you see suffering is you. So this is what I'm saying. This is the purpose of the African Americans ain't African is look, if you look around what's going on, where if you look at what happened to the ancient Egyptians. Come see you guys in the chat room. I see you in the chat room. I mean, come on, we let's get some feedback from you. What happened to the ancient Egyptians? Why aren't they here to speak for themselves today? Because they let other people come over and call them Egyptians. They didn't call themselves Egyptians. They didn't speak in the letters and the words that the people who came and conquered them spoke in. The same thing with us. English is not our language. It's not how we speak. It's not who we are. When these people come up with words to explain to explain us to the rest of the world, then we start using those same words. It wipes us out. Why? Because none of the plants, none of the animals recognize what you're talking about because you're not speaking your language. You're speaking the language of the people that conquered you. And this is the thing about the African American that's sad. We know this, yet we don't check. We keep on being Egyptians. We keep on being Moors. We keep on being Hebrew Israelites when we know goddamn well all that's garbage. All of it. And so this is what we'll pass down to our children and grandchildren. And if you look at the way things are going now, if you look at the way the things going now, we're not having babies like we used to. We're not. Brothers are on a whole nother self-destructive path. We're not life affirming. We're death giving. So these are the things that we're going to have to really talk about. So when you enter the group, if you come with all that bullshit, you're gonna get checked. It's not nothing to your ideas, because most of your ideas come from other people. You have no ideas. Most of African Americans don't have no ideas. All African Americans do is repeat what they have been taught by their master, right or wrong. So simple things like that, we should be able to look at and say, okay, we got to move forward. Ray, your thoughts on the your thoughts on that?
Well, you know what? African Americans, like you said, they don't think. Oh, am I coming in clear?
You're coming in loud and clear.
Okay. They're not thinking. They don't question anything. The stories that they've been given, They don't even question. For instance, you brought up about the Moors and these other ideologies that our people have been supporting all these years. It never crossed their minds to look up the history of those particular organizations, how they all came into being pretty much around the same time, and at a time to make sure that the mind of the indigenous people is further splintered, because our people was still strong. By 1900, our people was still strong, and they was building their communities and being self-sufficient. So in order for this country to be um, a place for dreamers, they had to make us willing participants of being, food for the fodder. We had to be the food, the financial food for the world, in order for the world to come here and build their wealth. So it's important that Negroes come out of the African American mindset and question all of this, because it's no coincidence all those groups came into being around the same time. But African Americans don't question that, and that's unfortunate. We get played constantly. No new games, just the same games over and over, and we defend that stuff. They come in African Americans ain't African, and they try to force that mess on the group. They know exactly what they're getting into, because the name of the group is African Americans ain't African. So that means don't come in here telling me I'm African descent. So, like I said, African Americans have got to learn to question. They have got to start questioning, because we they are selling the nonsense nonstop to African Americans. And look around. What have African Americans gained in all this time? Because I've heard somebody say, "Oh, we come a long way." Down. So it's time. It's time. And that again, I'm back to the group. It's important that when people come in that group, they be open to hear their truth. See, everybody can't hear the truth, and so they revert back to that programming for Hebrew Israelitism or Pan Africanism, and so they try to force that on those of us that are awake. So hey, I have zero tolerance for that. I really do. Because it's too late in the day for us to still be doing this same stuff and knowing that our grandmamas didn't tell us all of this. So,
Uh,
uh,
uh, about well, I don't go. September 11th, 9/11. What date did that happen? 2000, 2001.
yeah,
When
2001.
that happened, so here's a this is what I mean about thinking. When 9/11 hit, I mean, the country was in chaos. So I was talking to a friend, and as soon as it happened, I realized I knew it was an inside job because the story just didn't add up with what I was seeing. So as I was telling a friend of mine, I said, that's a government job. The government did that. It was an inside job. And she was, military, and she was just so stuck into it. And she just, what are you saying? You're crazy. I mean, she just went off on me. And I was showing her simple things like, those buildings, how they fall. Buildings don't fall like that unless they're demolished, unless they're in a demolition. She didn't get it. And then I showed her how the building, as the buildings were falling, there were bombs going off below the buildings falling down. And she didn't see that. Here we are 17 years later, and I just recently got a call from her, and she asked me that I remember that incident we had. And I told her, yeah. And she said, how couldn't she see that? She sees it now plain and clear. She's seen it now because it's been years, and there's millions of people who are putting out the information like this story is bullshit. So she was asking, she was like, how didn't I see that? I'm like, you didn't want to see it because you would have to be responsible for yourself. You have to go with what other people tell you in order to be part of the crowd. And that's the same thing that was going on with African Americans. Imagine you have teachers in universities teaching your children that they are foreign to their own home, which makes it simple for other people to come over and take your inheritance. You give it up. So, this is the purpose of the group. Listen, America created you. Nature in America created you. You are what nature created on this planet. And like I say, you were created for a purpose. I don't know what that purpose is. You know what that purpose is. And one of the reasons that African Americans like to delve into that foreign ideology is because they don't want to have to be responsible for what they have to do here. Edwin, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's true. But I like to clear up something that needs to be known, and we all have to be on the same page about this. A4 or African Americans ain't African. We're not claiming to be Native American, and I want to address that because there's a misconception of what a Native American actually is. It confers no ancestral ties to any Americas at all. I want to get that out, and I'll start by coming from this point of view because that is a political construct. It has nothing to do with our people, and we're not claiming that. We're the original Americans. Now, here's where it starts. Right here. Here it comes. The term Native American referred to pale European people with a relatively established history in the United States of America, as opposed to recent immigrants who held a nativist point of view. Ironically, it did not refer to the actual first ones who settled the land. Now I'm going to go to a 1828 Webster Dictionary definition for American. Pay close attention as I read it, and this will tell you what has been going on. The definition is telling you what has actually happened. American, a native of America, originally applied to the Aboriginals or copper colored races found here by the Europeans, but now applied to descendants of Europeans born in America. That is an 1828 Webster Dictionary definition for the word American. That applied to our people first and foremost, but the term native was never actually challenged when it came to these newly formed tribes that they developed with misnomers attached to them. The original peoples were of copper colored hue, not the ones you see sitting on the reservations and those claiming to be Native Americans, which they are, but we're not claiming to be that. And I need to have that clear when people enter the group that they know that we're not claiming that because those were constructs to allow what has been happening to this point on. But you have to really, really consider when you come into this group, you have to come in here and you have to come to learn, not to come to, do anything other than that. If you're not coming to the group for that purpose, don't even come into the group because you'll be wasting your time, our time, and it's counterproductive. It does you no good to claim ancestry on another land and you're not on that land. It makes no sense. And that's what I have to say about that. Anybody want to add to it?
Oh, you summed that up really well.
Yes, absolutely. Um, I'd like to say this. This is Nisi. I just like to say this. Now, we know that this message is catching on because one of the ways that we know is because the first test is going to be from your own collective because people don't want to wake up from their sleep states. I came up with my own little deduction about different sleep states. First, you have the comatose state, and that's a state that's that's where people just stay over there in their little corner They're in the bed. They might be sitting against the wall, but they stay put, and they're in a comfort zone, and they're dead asleep. Then the second phase, and people are in either one of these phases. They're rarely in all three. They're in either one of them. The second phase is what I like to call the sleepwalker. The sleepwalker is the one that is dangerous. They're actually dangerous because they don't even really know that they're not awake. They think they're awake, they think they're conscious, but they're not. And they're the ones who will come after you, and you have to make sure that you push that person back from you because they're dangerous. They don't even know that they're asleep. And the third phase, or the third state rather, because all of these are states, the third state is the zombie phase, the zombie state. Those are the people who will try to do you physical harm. They want to bite you. If you can uh, make relevance to the horror movies where we've all seen zombies, they want to bite you. They want to infect you with their bullshit. Those are zombies. And we have a lot of those. And I'm sorry to say, but it's the truth. Zombies are the ones who are in the various factions. All these different factions, I'm not going to name them. We know what they are. Look up the word faction. Those are zombies. And that includes, I will say this, that includes religion. Because if you ever notice that people, religious people, are the ones who come and they want to infect your brain. They want to infect your mind. And so do the other factions. Now that's the main thing that we want you to understand about African Americans Ain't African, is that there is no place for factions in this group, because African Americans Ain't African, it is not it is not a movement. It is not a faction. It is an awareness, an awakening. So what we do, or what we want to do for you in terms of helping you, we gladly open the group up and embrace you. We're glad to have you when you come. We want you to journey with us as best we can, but you have to be open to it, to share knowledge and light to our people, because that's what this is all about. We don't have time for people who are in comas, sleepwalkers, and we sure as hell are not going to tolerate any damn zombies. Okay? So, that's the main thing that we need you to understand. And we find that most of our people are in one of those states. They embrace factions, they embrace ideologies, and therefore they become inculcated with mentalities that are not their own, that are driving them. And as has been said, by my brothers and sisters, my siblings uh, on this very show, is that you can't continue to walk around and not understand that most of the mindset of the African American is simply not his damn own. And you become parrots and you mimic anything and everybody, and you try to test the weather and see what you should bandwagon and what you should get on. And it's time to get off of that shit.
Let me answer a couple of people in the chat room, because brothers are act in the chat room. This is what I mean, and it's normally the males. The males, brothers, don't want to do nothing. They like the position they're in, so they'll fight what we're saying. You got this one cat, Ankh Ra, Ankh Ra 999, trying to say y'all don't know everything. Shut up. Nobody's saying we know everything. That's that nigga mentality that we talk about. Stop. We're not saying we know everything. I don't know anything. But I do know this, that we didn't come over here on no boat. Because when we ask you where the ships, now y'all want to talk about something else. So, brother, stop that. We ain't here for that clown stuff. Take that stuff to your African people or whoever you talk to about that stuff. We don't claim to know everything. What I claim to know, and the other can speak for themselves, what I claim to know is this. We are getting our asses kicked here in America by all these foreigners over here. And we have brothers who are supposed to be defending the home front. They're defending some foreign ideology. I know that. So that's what I'm saying. All that stupid stuff. Then we have another brother who said, it's about the resources here. What are solutions? What do you think solutions are? This is what I mean. We got to think, y'all. We can't just be in here not knowing nothing and asking a whole bunch of dumbass questions. What do you think we're supposed to do? These are your resources. The tobacco industry, all the images that are put out there, and so many people have put out images. 1,000 Go Ahead, Tyrone Street, Shay Davis. All these brothers are putting out information showing that you ran the tobacco industry. How come you don't have a cigarette company now? You damn sure smoke them all. How come you don't have a cigarette company? I don't know. Nobody told us. We just on that dumb stuff. And we can't keep doing that because it doesn't work. And then try to play the victim role. Well, why you won't let me express myself? Because you don't express yourself. You express what somebody else told you. So solutions, you see what the solutions are? You're in a different position. I don't walk in your shoes. You see the solutions. You give some solutions. Do other people come and support your businesses? No. What's the solution? It's simple. Don't support theirs. You see your children being miseducated in the school system, and this is all of them. Do people send their children to you to get educated? Then don't send your kids to them to get educated. The solutions are right in your face. The reason you don't look at the solutions, or the reason you don't look for solutions, is because you don't want to change. You like getting what you're getting here. How come the so-called black man, how come he doesn't produce cars? How come he doesn't produce cars to put his children to work? Those are solutions. They're right in your face. Everybody else does it. Everybody comes over to America to do one thing: pimp the African American. And the African American loves getting pimped.
Woo!
Am I lying?
We would have it no other
I'm
way.
not. I'm not saying this to be an asshole. I'm serious. We know, goddamn well, you know you invented the shoe lasting machine, but nobody. And I know y'all love to beg about all these brothers, 13, 14 years old, going to college and scoring like Einstein did. Got a higher I. How come you're not making any shoes? How come these? What are those mines used for? Those mines are used for to make other people rich. That's all the African American does. We don't look out for ourselves. How come we're not making airplanes? How come we're not making rockets? How come we're not going to the moon? How come we're not going out in space? Why aren't we doing the things on our land? Because most of the time, 9 times out of 10, the brothers who are supposed to be putting together and doing that, they want to claim that they're Egyptians. And the Egyptians were wiped off the planet a long time ago. Charlene, you had something to say?
Well, I can say something. You know what? I see a lot of Africanizing going on, whereas you have our collective still Africanizing our people. And what I did, I reached out and which I knew this already, but we had many wars here. There were many wars going on at one time. And what the males used to do was to get the women and the children out of harm. They would put the children and women on the boats to come further from the Caribbean, and likewise from here to the West Indies. And when our people settled wherever they could and whatnot, uh, and they are called Africans, uh, they're not literal Africans. Those are people who have been conquered or who have moved to another place on our continent to get out of harm's way, away from the fighting of the males when they had to defend their territories. And I see a lot of our people not just understanding that uh, those were not literal Africans. And I mean, and then for I what I see is that it is not fair, and they do not have the right to Africanize anybody when those peoples um, Grandparents never told them anything about Africa. And I asked this question: when was the last time any African Americans' grandmothers took them over to Africa to go visit her peoples from Africa?
Mhm.
And
So
they
that,
look
oh, go ahead.
like damn fools. Now you see that expression, whereas they can't even answer that. They cannot even answer that question. American Negroes, or the people, uh, 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 our collective of people now called African Americans, have no business even uh, 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 believing in that narrative, or even repeating that narrative.
Mhm.
It
You're
is
absolutely right.
it is simple. I mean, you know what? I met a sister. She's from Dominica. No, Dominica. She's from Dominica. And I'm looking at her and I'm like, you know, if she had not told me, I would not even be able to pull her out of spot her in the crowd of someone who was not born and raised in the Southeast. And so I reached out to Ambassador Radon over at FIA, and I was saying, wow, this sister looks just like uh, us. There's nothing different from her. Same complexion, hair, the way that sisters walk, the way sisters are shaped, everything. And she said that some of our people during the uh, um, during the time where they were setting up places for foreigners to come and settle, a lot of our people were sick over there.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think that's how we always. Okay, so you've all heard the story of they found the Egyptians' remains in the Grand Canyon.
Mhm.
You've all heard that story.
Yes.
Okay.
Hmm.
Okay, so I mean, so my question is, so if they had to get to Egypt, if the Egyptians got to Phoenix, how did they get there? They certainly had to come through Gulf of Mexico. Or if they didn't come through the Gulf of Mexico, if it came the other way around, they had to come through California or Mexico or Washington State or whatever. Where is the evidence in those places where they first hit the land? They just tell us anything. And being that we don't know shit, and we don't, stop pretending like, no, we do know something. We just go for anything. This is what keeps the confusion going on in the community. They'll tell you that they found some Egyptian mummies in the Grand Canyon, and you don't say to protect your own homeland. You don't even say, well, well, prove it. They don't have to prove it because they know they are talking to people who don't think, who don't believe in thinking, and get pissed off when you ask them a question. These are serious implications that we put ourselves in. Then we pass this shit down to our children, and we think it's cool, and it's not. So, like I say, African Americans ain't Africans. All we're saying simply is, look, if you've been told you're an African American, if you've been told you're a Hebrew Israelite, if you've been told you're an Egyptian, if you've been told you are more, those people they're not even on the planet no more. So when you utter this is what you are saying that, hey, I don't want to be here no more either. And we're seeing that's the fact. Sisters don't have babies like they used to. They rather have careers. We're not on the land like we used to be. Stewards of the land. So when you look at in the 1860s, when the southern states were issuing money, you were on the money. You were on the money because it was your industry that these people were trying to tap into, and they figured that if they put your image on the money, they would be able to get into your industries. And that's what happened. Slaves are Slavs. Those Czechoslovakians and all those other Slovaks that came over here, that's who they are. Somehow we picked that up and we took it and ran with it and played that pity party, and they showed us roots, and all of a sudden we slaves. It didn't go down like that. Search your family, start with your mother, then start with your father's mother, or vice versa if you want to, and find out who your people were. Find out who birthed you. Chire, you had something you want to add?
Well, yeah. People need. You know what? I get tired of debating with people. So what I tell them is, don't believe me. What you need to do is do your family tree and talk to your elders. Now, how upfront can anybody be by telling you to do that? You see? So don't believe us. Don't believe us. Go do your family tree and talk to your elders. A lot of people won't even talk to their elders. I heard I won't mention the person's name, but they was supposedly calling out Aboriginal Americans. And the show consisted of a person who descend from the Dominican Republic and Jamaica. Somebody or his guest was from Jamaica, and they were sitting back. This is going in on some of what Charlene was saying, and they were sitting there saying stuff like, "Oh, you can't." They got their information from their grandmother. They don't know nothing. That's an insult. That's an insult. And you know, back in the day, people used to get beat down talking like that. You didn't talk about people's mamas and grandmamas, but they did that. And so-called African Americans accept that, but that's unacceptable. So I tell them I don't want to debate. What you need to do is go talk to your elders, go do your family tree, and then come back to me and talk to me about historical reality. Because the time is winding down for this foolishness. I be trying to tell people all these games that they co-signing all this nonsense they co-signing about themselves. It's gonna bite them in the butt. So hey, those who have ears that can hear, hey, heed the warning. Talk to your elders, get your family stories, and then do your family tree while you still can. Because they're currently trying to redact records and add things to records that weren't there. African American was not on the census. That's a recent thing. So, family, you need to do your family tree. Don't believe us. Just do your family tree and talk to your elders for goodness sake. And stop listening to these foreigners who coming in telling you who you are and where you came from and crapping on your grandmamas. Stop listening to them. They no good. Anybody who crap on your grandmother is not good for you.
And you would think you would think that the males in the group, like Ankh Ra, you would think these cats would, well, who are your grandmother? Who was your great grandmother? Who was your great great grandmother? Who was the woman that birthed you? So that's what I always ask the Moors. Who are the women that birthed the Moors? They never show the women that birthed them. Why don't they ever show that? When you ask all these brothers, check out the brothers with all the names from foreign names. Who are the women that birthed them? Who are the women that birthed the first Muslims? They weren't your mothers, like the sister said earlier. In the women over here are totally different than African women. Not saying that African women are bad, because that's how many of us take it. I'm not saying they're just different species. That's all. African women can do things that women over here can't do. Why? Because the land mass, the resources over here are different than those over in Africa. So the women have to do more different things. This is common sense. But we're not into that. We want to argue and fuss and fight and act like beta males. And I can only speak for the males, because that's who I'm up against. The African American, the man that calls himself a black man. What's a black man? And why do black people always lose? And since they've been losing, why do you keep using that term? See, brothers don't want to talk about that, so they keep using it. So, Ankh Ra, please leave the group, man, or be removed. Because what I'm saying is we try to put out information and people are hitting the people are typing in the chat and you coming up with this idiotic shit. And we ain't really got time for that. Take that to your Egyptian brothers, go over there on the pyramids and talk about that. We ain't trying to hear it here. So hey, thanks for coming and reminding us, but you got to go, homie. Peace.
Can I add
Edwin.
to that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I have something to add to that.
Yes.
I've always asked any Pan African that came into the group to give me any particular science or whatever he or she is using to suggest that life springs forth from a single location on any planetary system. Not one of them could answer it. What is it that the continent of Africa has that you cannot find here in the Americas in terms of supporting life? What would be different about it to even go there with that? That's a European construct, the out of Africa theory. It's actually a theory. So to actually latch onto something like that, you're actually listening to the wrong Europeans, because the early explorers, when they came here, they described us, not what you see, on those reservations or those Mongolians from Siberia. No, not the Native American. No, they described our people, and I'll give you a good example, okay? Because if I remember correctly, the first designation that was given to us was Indian by the English, and from what I understand, the Spaniards, it was Negro. So now I'm going to read something from a Spaniard that described the American continent and who was on it. And I quote, the Negro, excuse me a minute. The Negro type is seen in the most ancient Mexican sculpture. The Negroes figured frequently in the most remote traditions of some American pueblos. It is to this race doubtlessly belongs to the most ancient skeletons. Distinct from the red American race, which have been found in various places from Bolivia to Mexico, it is likely we repeat America was a Negro continent. That was Carlos Cuervo Marquez from 1858 to 1930, ethnologist, botanist, military general, historian. And we have more records and files of similar accounts and descriptions, all the same. Now, I was fortunate to have parents that mentioned my lineage to the Indian. My mother from Virginia and my father from Trinidad, and his sister, my aunt. I remember that clearly. But when I went to school, for some reason, when you go to the public school system, those designations and those representations that they showed in the school system, somehow obscured what I was told when I was younger. And but I did find it strange when I was younger, when they used to put a pale individual and try to pass that individual off as an Indian. That did seem strange to me. Well, little did I realize, as I got older and I came across A4, African Americans Ain't Africans, all that came back to me. Finding this group was like finding a needle in a haystack. And I learned a lot from being in the group, and the group was very instrumental in connecting certain dots that I needed to connect in terms of my ancestry, which I'm still on that path of finding it. There's been a lot of paper genocide, record tamperings that have been done, especially in the state of Virginia, by a well-known criminal bastard named Walter Plecker. He was very instrumental in trying to erase the Indian out of that state and any other state that actually used his program. So it's very important that you know that, because there's been a lot of that that has been going on for the longest of time. Most of us, 90%, 99% of the people, when the original colonists came in, they saw us here. They were not Africans. They did not identify us as Africans. They did not bring us over as Africans. That transatlantic African slave trade was highly exaggerated. Okay, because when you really stop to think about it, the numbers that they claimed that they brought over, the amount of boats that would have been required would have been totally logistically impossible for them to pull that off. How in the world were the Europeans going to get themselves here by expending those many ships? Well, I don't call them ships. I refer to them as boats. They would have never been able to pull that off. So anyway, uh, keep that in mind. Okay. All right.
Another thing that we have to be cognizant about in dealing with that slave ship story is, I mean, I would say a nurse. This is in the group too. A nurse just put out her her of her being a nurse. She just put out her ideas of what it would like to be a person coming 5,000 miles on a wind-driven ship across the Atlantic, laying in position for 5 months, chained down to other people, above their head, having people defecating and throwing up, vomiting all over the place. What would be the likely scenario for people living in something like that now?
That would be impossible. Literally impossible.
Literally impossible. It would be impossible for somebody to, and there was, you couldn't even light matches in the boat because there was no oxygen in there. We will turn our backs on all this information to want to argue, fuss, and fight, and come up with other theories that somebody else told you. Most African Americans don't even think. They refuse to. And I've even heard some of them say, "Oh, when I think my head hurt." We don't even think about what's going on and what's happening to us. We would rather argue, fuss, and fight. You can argue and fuss and fight with me, but I'm just going to ask you a simple question. And this is what you do to people: ask them to explain what they're saying. Soon as they can, soon, because they won't be able to explain it because somebody else told them that idea. So I tell people who call themselves African American to explain that to me in your own words. Don't use what your master have taught you. Tell us. And they never can do it because nobody in their families never told them that. Plus, the story's a lie. All you have to do is think. When your
Care.
brain, when your brain moves together on the inside, you ever see that? You ever see that picture? It's an image that they show in cartoons where a person is thinking something and it's like in a cloud. Those are your ideas. When you're thinking, when your mind is moving, when you're pondering things, your mind starts to move. You have to act stuff. As a natural person on this planet, certain things just don't happen. You just saw the hurricanes go through the Caribbean, and you think that a slave ship can beat a hurricane across the Atlantic Ocean? Really? And your lecturers, your professors, they don't tell you this. They don't make you think about this. This because the job is to keep the African American dumb. That's why they tell you anything, and you play that victim role. Like, well, that what they told me. Dude, saying, because 9 out of 10, what people are saying to you is to use you and to pimp you of your natural resources. Charlene, did you make it back?
Yes, I just want to say something. People look at the term Africa being literal. The term Africa applied to peoples all around this world, whether you're in Africa, America, Europe, Asia. who no longer connected to their land and or conquered by war or by religion or by assimilation. So, like I said, it, it, that's what the political term African means. That's a political term applied to indigenous peoples around the world. I don't see why people cannot grasp that concept.
You know why they don't grasp it? You know why they don't grasp it, Charlene? Because you know you have to do something. You know we know we have to do. We know we can't. Where we going now? Where we're headed now? Where they're taking you now? You ever see those sisters who are Trump supporters, Diamond and Silk?
Oh man,
Hmm.
that's Medea and Aunt Bam. Isn't that Bam? Aunt Bam and Medea. Don't they look like them?
I don't know who those people are.
Yeah.
I don't know who they are, but
Oh,
that's the mindset that the African American has to be. Don't know nothing. You have to be in that position. That's why TV is such a big thing with them. That's why the radio is such a big thing with them, because they cannot stand to listen to their own thoughts. This is not my conjecture. This is truth. I talk to
That's,
African Americans and they say they don't like to think because they get a headache thinking. Ed, when you were saying,
yeah, I wanted to add something because there was somebody in there that asked for solutions, and I all I could say to that is this: you have to be self-responsible. That's the solution. Stop looking for somebody to lead you. Somebody to be your leader, your hero, your savior. You want that? Look in the mirror. You need to look in the mirror. Let me read something to you. It says here, in oneself lies the whole world. And if you know how to look and learn, the door is there and the key is in your hand. Nobody on earth can give you either the key or the door to open except yourself. That says a lot. And then we have this. All ideologies are idiotic, whether religious or political, for its conceptual thinking, the conceptual word which has so unfortunately divided man. Okay? What am I saying? What I'm trying to say is that you latch onto these political and religious ideologies that's coming out of somebody else's head to manipulate you. First of all, you need to connect with your own spirit. Okay? You know right from wrong. Nobody had to tell you. You didn't need to go to a book to tell you that it's not a good idea to kill your own mother. You knew this already. You know, so you have to start to uh, look from within and become responsible for yourself. I've always said this, that people don't need jobs; they need a sense of responsibility. We actually operate in a system that really does not. It's not really conducive towards that. And I think that there's going to have to be, how could I say this? There is going to have to be an awareness, some kind of revolution, an intellectual revolution of sorts, to really change that, because too many people are looking to someone to give them something to do. You have to know exactly what what your purpose is while you're here on this planet. You do have a purpose, and there is something that you need to know in terms of what that purpose is. Nobody could tell you that. You have to find that out on your own. But see, while we're in survival mode, and that's not a good state to be in, because that's not really living. While we're going around chasing, well, actually, they have it set up in such a way where they put you in that position to be in survival mode. You're trying to make ends meet, and you can't really find your sense of purpose when you're in that state. Not everybody can just pick up and go into another area which they can actually see where they're happy at. I mean, how many people have you come across that have actually told you this? You know something? I like my job so much that if I did not have to get paid to live, I'd do it for nothing. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but very few people do you hear say that. And it's been said, this has been said quite often. I remember it and I agree with it. If you like what you do, you'll do it well. If you like what you do. But what do we have with people working jobs, 9 to 5 jobs, under the pressures, the economic strain that we're being put under? Most of the people, if you ask them, they're just doing it for the money. That's all they're doing it for. So how well you think they're going to do the job in the first place when they don't even like what they're doing? They're doing it just to survive. This has to be changed. This kind of thinking and the way it's all set up. But that's for another program. I don't know. I felt like I needed to add to that. About the solutions. The person asked that question. I wanted to throw that in.
I'd like to say something, Carrie, real quick. Um, every time you look around, uh, African Americans, really Negroes, and I spell it Negrows because they're not deserving of the word Negro, and I don't find that offensive. But I use Negroes because you need to grow and evolve in your mind. So that's the part of grow, Negroes. Solutions. What the hell is what solutions? There we have a myriad of problems, and so there's no one solution, and that's just some default BS. The solutions start with you. As you said, Edwin, it starts with the individual in the mirror. It starts with your own household. It starts with you, your immediate familiar. It starts with your children. Okay, that's who it starts with. You don't have a damn bit of control, neither do we or anybody else, over anyone outside your home. You don't have control over your children after they get a certain age because they tune you out, so you don't have control over them. But what you do have control over is while you're raising them, to instill certain things into them, and that's part of a self-awareness, and to start a core of being able to look around them. For instance, I just want to piggyback off this stuff about the boats. Here's something that came up in a discussion a couple of years back, and it made perfect sense. And we all know that you can't drive a damn long distance in a vehicle. I don't care how cushy and comfortable it is, without stopping to stretch your damn legs. Everybody knows that. If you ride in a plane or anything for a long length of time, you have to get up and stretch your legs so that blood can be circulating. Okay? There is something that's called deep vein thrombosis, that if you go on a very long plane ride, you have to be very careful, because you can have blood clots, and it can go to your brain and kill you, without you massaging and getting up and moving around those muscles. You simply can't do it. Why do you think they have to turn people over who are ill and bedridden? They can't stay on one on their back, or just on one position. Nobody can do that. The body is that it's made to be in motion and to move. Okay? And if it doesn't, then you can incur some serious damage. That is a fact. So when we're talking to you about these things, we're simply talking to you about reality, and the things that we're going to put to you and subject to you and ask you questions about. They just make common sense. And then the last thing is that I don't know why the hell you want to be believing things that are coming from the very group whose agenda is that of suppression, that of inculcation, indoctrination, and mind manipulation. They haven't even been here on the damn planet a good 6,000 years themselves. So they're throwing everything in the kitchen sink at you. Like Johann Blumenbach, Darwin, all of these folks are what? All of these damn so-called scientific theories came from who? And it is past time for people to start begin questioning them, other than the folks whose agenda it is to get money and to keep this pan-Africanism, Afrocentricism, all that shit going, because as it's starting to crumble and fall apart, they're going to be losing money. That's who uh, these universities started hiring back in the 60s and 70s to keep that shit going. Okay. And they even know the truth, but they don't want to cut off their money spigot. These are facts. This isn't anybody just talking and making up stuff. This isn't opinions. These are facts. And when you look at, when you're talking about the out of Africa theory, the two people who were some anthropologists that were principal in promoting it were in the early 90s. They have refuted some of their shit because they know that it doesn't hold up. The outer Africa theory doesn't hold up because it is more of when you look at the word polygenesis, it doesn't hold up. It doesn't hold up based on just about anything. And again, the root word is theory. That's what we ask you to do, is to think.
You know what, Nisi?
Mm-hmm.
Um, okay. The scholars that okay, there's some people like Professor Small and a bunch of other people, other people. They have been pushing this Pan African stuff, like Renoko and so forth, and Winters, Clive Winters. They have been pushing this for a long time, and if you notice of late, what they've been doing, they've been trying to blend in some Negro truth, trying to blend
Mm-hmm.
it in because they know that our people are waking up, and so they trying to reassure themselves that they have a means of continuing making money off of them. So
Mm-hmm.
now they starting to add in. Oh yeah, um, um I think Small said that he grew up in an environment where they told him that he grew up in the customs of, I don't know what tribe it was, but he was well aware who he was. He pushed that Pan African stuff for all these years. Now all of a sudden he's admitting how he was brought up. And so he trying to blend in this new awareness that our people are getting so that he can assure himself of a means of earning a living. Now, look,
Mm-hmm.
don't nobody hate them earning a living. Nobody. But you got to tell the truth. You have to tell the truth, not partial truth, not sandwich truth, but the truth. Our people are in a dire situation because they've been listening to these well spoken, well educated Negroes, as you say, that needs to grow up. And so that has kept them behind the eight ball a long time, not using any common sense because these people need them to believe them. Don't nobody call Dr. Smiles or Professor Smile and put him in check and say, hey, show and prove. Because they love to do that to us. They never tell those people show and prove. Never.
Mm-hmm.
They give all kinds of lectures where people pay, to come and hear them. And nobody stand up and question them or anything. They just take it as fact. And that's the same thing with Renoko Rashidi. They just take all his nonsense that he went around the world and everybody telling him they came out of Africa and all that stuff. Those people not telling him that, and nobody has said, "Well, you've been going all these years. Why haven't you produced a video where the Fijians are saying, oh yeah, they came from Africa, or that the Hawaiians were saying that, when the Europeans were colonizing them, they sent for the Africans to come and help them because that's their people." Nobody is verifying that nonsense. Nobody. But yet,
Mm-hmm.
so I just find it strange. All of a sudden, they're trying to blend it in the truth, but they still hanging on to that Pan African lie. They still doing that, and they know better. So people have to give this some serious side eye. They really do.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what's happening to the so-called African Americans. The job is to do this. The job is to eradicate you from your ancestral homeland so that all these foreigners over here can feel comfortable. You, the African American, a month ago, you were jumping up and down for a movie about you were a Black Panther. A month later, here you are marrying into the royal family, which Edwin said earlier, these are criminal organizations. These are criminal organizations. They're killing up the land. And once they kill up the land, where are you going to go? Because Africans don't claim you. You have to ask somebody, can you go somewhere? So for the group of people who call themselves African American, and to the people listening to this program, to the people that's listening to this program, uh, you know, like Chai Ray said, do a family lineage search. Check your family. Do a family search. Ask your grandmothers. Ask your older uncles and aunts. Who are you guys and where do you guys come from? They know. A lot of our ancestors and a lot of our relatives don't know because they rather had took the job. They'd rather go ahead and play around with the people who are giving them jobs so that those people can feel comfortable. You don't get upset when you look at what on TV and these people are skiing on your mountains, they're fishing in your lakes, they're doing all this stuff, and you're in the cities killing each other. That doesn't bother you. I know it doesn't bother Ankh Ra that he's kind of with that stuff. So this is what I'm saying. The whole job is to get rid of you so that these foreigners can come over here and feel comfortable. And that's because that's what's happening. Okay, we're gonna go ahead.
About some of the theories, which I try to get some of us to understand about the out of Africa theory. The out of Africa theory is centered around a half ape, no, and a hairy ape named Lucy. Now, the theory that nobody understands is that you have to come from the same. They've changed it so much. You have to be a descendant of Lucy, meaning that people who are claiming the out of Africa theory that their ancestors migrated out of Africa, it is centered around Lucy, meaning that Lucy is your ancestor. A hairy chimp is your ancestor. A hairy chimp is your ancestor.
Now,
The Africa theory does not work without Lucy. And Carrie, I have gone with it through debates with brothers and sisters who claim Lucy.
yeah, I mean, I know, and that's what I mean. These are grown people. I'm sorry, y'all, but the time you get to be 21 years old, you can't be walking around here dumb. I mean, that's the reality of what's going on. We just act like what we know is it. And everybody knows that you've been miseducated badly. First in the church, then in the school system. You know it. But yet you still go with what you've been taught. You go by what, like the people were saying earlier, the Ranoka Rashidis, all these cats who are telling you this information. Ranoka Rashidi tell you he's an African, to then turn around and tell you his grandmama was a Cherokee, which is a lie because Cherokee people don't exist. Those are Europeans. What were your people called? Where did they live? One of the ways you can find out who they were called and where they just find out where they lived. See, those places in the South that many of us ran away from, many of us were scared off our land. We left our land into the hand of people who did dastardly things to our land. We are responsible for that. See, just like you see over there in Egypt now, it's all a desert. Remember, Egypt didn't used to be a desert. Egypt used to be fertile. Egypt used to be like you see New Orleans now, like you see down there in Louisiana now. That's how Egypt used to be. Now it's all dried out, all the resources gone, all the people are dead. I mean, how come Ma'at didn't come save them? How come Osiris didn't save them? They were obliterated off this planet because they wanted to listen to some foreign doctrine. The men wanted to sleep with the European women, the Greek women, and the women wanted to sleep with the Roman and Greek soldiers. These are what these stories should be telling you. Okay, we got a few more minutes. We got like 6 more minutes to go. So I want to give it around to the table so everybody can put their last give us their last thoughts.
I'll start.
Okay, great.
Last, last thing I like to say is this thing where people are getting DNA tests. That is one massive fraud. Stay away from that. Just do a genealogy search on your own, and go with that. There's enough resources available to do that. We're in the age of information. You'll be able to do it when you're in the group. There are people here that could help you out with that when it comes to those searches. And of course, you ask any of your elderly relatives is a good start, and always make sure you follow the matrilineal line. In other words, your mother's lines, all the mothers down the line, because that's where it counts. You are what your mother is. Well, at least science does confirm that aspect of it for sure. The mitochondria DNA is always of the mother. This patriarchal um, ideology that's been brought forth in the three main culprit religions, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, you need to leave that alone. It's very disrespectful to the women and your mothers who brought you forth. Any man holding to that should be ashamed of himself. And I'll leave it at that.
Edwin, thank you. And you can check out Edwin Nathaniel in AfricanAmericans.org. Listen, we're not in the group to try to, you can, we're not trying to silence anybody. But when you come in a group that says African Americans ain't African, talking about Africa, those are not your thoughts. The sign above the door say African Americans ain't African. We understand what Africa's going through. They're basically going through the same thing we're going through. But one of the things about us is why Africans flee their country, many of us don't. We stay here. Africans are coming over here to claim your stuff. They come over here to get your women pregnant, right? Yes. They don't move into your neighborhoods with you. They try to move in with the Europeans. They're over here to pimp you like the rest of the world is. That continent over there, Europe, Asia, and Africa, that's one continent. All you have to do is look at it. Just look at it. Stop listening to what other people say. Do your due diligence and do your own research. And like Edwin says, find out who your people are. Do a genealogy search. And we're going to have Shiree explain that to you because that's what she do. Shiree?
Well, basically, you know who your mama and you know who your grandmother is, your mother's mother. And you just go from there. You get their birth dates, you get their names, and the location where they lived, and you go to a site like familysearch.org and you put that information in, and you see where it leads you. It's most likely going to bring up some old census reports, but it requires some patience. And I figure like this: if you sit down and you get into all this other junk, you can sit down and learn about yourself because you won't regret it. It's important that you know who you are. It's very important. You don't need to take anybody's word for who you are. You need to go and do your paper search. Therefore, you can see the game that was played on our people, and you can reconnect to your ancestors. So, if in the group, like Edwin has said, you in the group, people there to help you.
Right. And you got to come in. You got to come in asking for help. You can't come in arrogant, calling us stupid and stuff, because we can take it because I'm not stupid. So what I want to know is whatever ideology that you're spewing out, I want you to be able to explain it. And one thing the African American doesn't do too well to think. Somebody tells you an idea and you repeat it. That doesn't help us. It helps them. Nisi, could you go ahead and give us your last thoughts, please?
Let me just get on here. A second. Sorry about that. Battery was about to go down. I just want to say that this group is one that is a labor of love for all of us. As far as the admins, we ask that you be respectful when you're in the group, but first and foremost, we ask that you think. As I've said before, all of the things that you need to do begin with self. Start within your household, start within your own familiar and your children, and understand the basic. One of the basic things that you need to understand is why. Ask yourself this question: why are we the target and focus of every damn thing that goes on this landmass and within this so-called corporate construct, which is called a nation, if we did not weigh the significance that we know that we do? When people come here from other places and they're so-called immigrants, they are even told to not, even if they are melanated people, they're told to separate from us, to be apart from us, and all of that. And so everybody targets us. Why would they do that? If you did not weigh the significance that you do historically, originally, this is your land, you would not be the focus. Nobody would give a damn about you, but everything harbors around you because this is your land. You are not these misnomered people that they have now tried to orchestrate and brainwash you into believing that you are. And if you want to be open to your true self and to help your children going forward, because all of us are linked together and we're all in this together and we need to do this work, then the time is now.
Thank you, Nisi. We appreciate that. And like she said, we are one. You know, to keep thinking that we're African, Buddhas, Hindus, Muslim, Moors, that just breaks us down into little fiefdoms, and it doesn't help. Charlene, you want to talk about the theories that people put out. You want to speak on that. Could you talk to us and close us out on that theory ideology?
Well, I did a few minutes ago when I was talking about Lucy. Lucy, the out of Africa theory is centered around Lucy. There is no out of Africa theory without Lucy. You cannot abandon Lucy and believe any ancestors walked out of Africa uh, uh, um, and and um, and came to other lands and stuff and without that theory. Another theory is about the Bering Strait. The Bering Strait is like sub 0 degree wind chill. There is no way in the world people walked across the damn Bering Strait. It is impossible. Those are impossible conditions for any peoples to have walked all of those miles to here. And I do want to say about the DNA, uh, from what I've researched, the DNA they take less than 1% of your DNA, less than 1%. That means that 99.9% is out there, is they don't even consider. Less than 1%. They're trying to match you to an ancestor, and within that less than 1%, you don't even know the percentage that they're using. So they have the 0.1% that they're using, but you don't know what percentage, how much of a percentage that they're using, meaning that if it's 20%, 30%, 80%, or whatever. But they are using less than 1% to match you to an ancestor. If y'all fall for that, then y'all need to fall for it. They need to beat you. They need to do whatever. If you cannot overstand that they're using less than 1%.
Thank
You
you,
signed up,
Charlene.
you signed up for that ass whooping.
Thank you, Charlene. Well, so we're going to end this. We're going to end this program right now because we don't want to. We know many of you have work to do, and so basically, you can come check us out in the Facebook group. African Americans Ain't Africans. There's all kind of resources there. If you spend a couple of hours going through the page and through the information and the images that people have shared, you will be convinced. Because matter of fact, we have images in the group from people that were drawn 200 and 300 years ago that look just like some of the people that you see today. You can't do that with Africa. We can't go over to Africa and pull up a picture of an African and say Shaka Khan looks like that. It won't happen. So this is the work that the people in the group, we have a ton of people who help out in the group, who write stories, who share images, who give us something else to think about. This is what we would like the people who come in the group to do, not repeating something that you don't know nothing about that somebody told you that you believe. So we can't, that doesn't work. You've been doing that for the past couple of 100 years and you have got nothing out of it but a foot in the ass. We can't do that anymore. So you can come in the Facebook group, African Americans Ain't African. There's all kind of information in there. And then you can just ask questions. Or you can go to the webpage, AfricanAmericans.ain't African.org, check out what we got over there. And what we're trying to do into the group is connect the people back to their ancestral homeland. Because thinking that we're Africans and Africans don't claim you. Africans don't call on you. The South Africans don't call on you to help you to help you get those people off the land. The Zimbabweans don't come over there and don't ask you to come over there and help get those settlers off the land. They do it themselves. They have an affinity with their land and they know it's theirs. When are you going to know this is yours? Again, I want to say thank you for joining us tonight. I want to thank my guests, Chai Ray, Edwin Nathaniel, Nisi, and Charlene Brown. Thank you for coming on and sharing your ideas and thoughts with us. And hey, we'll see you next time. Peace out, y'all.